director of Illinois ABLE. It's a tax-advantaged way to save for disability-related expenses without jeopardizing your benefits. In addition to that position, many of you may know JJ from a lot of other things she's done. She's done it all. She's the founder of jjlist.com, which is a Yelp-style social enterprise that helps businesses meet the needs of both customers and employees that have disabilities. She's involved in No Boundaries, a supported education program designed to help people with disabilities build skills and obtain competitive employment. And the Disability Awareness Player is one of my favorites. It's an interactive troupe that trains businesses on how to integrate disability awareness into their customer service and their business practices. Super interesting. If you ever go on and Google it, it's really interesting. So please help me welcome JJ Hanley.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My bad, too, about the PowerPoint. It's going to look a little bit like this, but hopefully you'll walk out of here with enough information, and I have other materials that you won't feel like you missed out. All right, we're going to get started right away. As I know some of the faces here. Firstly, Connect to Community is such an impressive organization. Really, I've been around the block a couple of times in our region, and this organization provides amazing education for people in the community that are touched by disability. So I think it's just terrific, and I'm thrilled to be here. I left all of those things that I was doing. I'm a parent of a young adult with autism spectrum disorder, and I left all of the professional work that I was doing when the opportunity to work for Treasurer Frerichs to direct the Illinois ABLE plan came along because I believe, and I believe more every day, that it is a game changer long-term for individuals and families touched by disability. But I also recognize that we are a community that is often driven, and justly so, by fear, that has been for decades trapped in federal means benefits pattern and paradigm, which requires rigid reporting, always opportunities for getting it wrong, benefit specialist interaction that can be anything but positive. And so we, especially as our kids age and go into the adult world, we start to get into that mindset of my child will always be poor, we are going to be 100%, or he or she's going to be 100% dependent on federal means tested benefits. ABLE changes it, and today when you leave here, you're going to have hopefully that enough of an understanding to see how it can start to play a role in your life, your child's life. If it's okay, are there families here, individual families of people with disabilities? And kids that are younger than 16? Kids that are 16 to 21? And then kids that are older than 21. So we run the gamut. ABLE is fine for all of these age groups. So I'm glad that we're talking about it. This is interactive. Ask questions, jump in. If the answer's coming later, we'll put it on hold. But I want to make sure that you get the information that you need to make a decision about ABLE. Who here's heard of ABLE? Is the word finally getting out? Good. Because Illinois, like most other states that operate ABLE programs, there are now 42 states in the country that offer ABLE plans. Some states offer their plan to anybody, no matter where you live. Some states offer their plan only to people who live in the state. Illinois is the first. We offer our plan to anybody, no matter where you live. We are part of a consortium now of 17 states. It's actually one of the smart things that Illinois did was the ABLE legislation, which stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience, was passed in 2014 at the federal level. States like Illinois adopted state legislation in 2015, 2016, 2017, we launched our plan. So we're only 2 years old, it's very young. And some states like Illinois looked at this and said, we've got about 325,000 people who were even eligible for this in our state. There's no way we're going to be able to get a plan that is affordable, that's high quality, doing this on our own. By the way, when I say get a plan, that's what I mean, standing up a plan. Illinois, thankfully, does not manage the money. Illinois, thankfully, does not touch the money. However, because Illinois comes before ABLE, it's been a harder sell in our state. And I'm here to say our plan, Illinois ABLE, is one of the highest quality, lowest cost plans in the country. Very proud of it. Not a lot to be proud of in our state these days, but this is something we can be proud of because we got smart and said, we can't do this on our own. We don't have a big enough market. So you can see already that I'm not talking about social service programs. I'm talking about markets, financial products, things that are private sector. We don't have a market to stand this up. Pulled other states together, starting with 5. We now have 17 states in the alliance. We represent more than a quarter of the eligible population nationwide as an alliance. Each of us has our own plan, but we all use the same program manager. The program manager manages all of the record keeping, the ins and outs, the funds transfers, et cetera, and the investments that an individual can make go into passively managed, index-based funds, just like I might choose funds for my health savings account or my IRA, my other retirement account, 529 college savings. So when you think about ABLE, think about it as a tool that's part of a changing and shifting paradigm for people with disabilities, where now we're looking at what am I going to buy? How am I going to structure a future? And when I say I mean the individual with the disability or his or her supporter doing it together. What's that picture going to look like? Historically, if you qualified for federal means tested benefits, you went on those benefits and you were trapped in a very fixed life of poverty if you didn't have the means, and most people don't, to open a special needs trust and for your family to have that special needs trust. Now ABLE is another tool. It's a part of the basket. But it is not a social benefits program. Does that make sense? So put on your private sector hat when we start talking about ABLE and ABLE accounts and what they can do. All right, so the basics and the benefits about owning an account, we'll talk a little bit about the details of the account shortly, is that if you receive SSI benefits, what's your cap? What's the most assets you can have in your name, me the individual with a disability, if I'm on SSI? 2,000. What happens if I go over 2,000? I lose my benefits. And so for a lot of folks who qualify for SSI, others who qualify for Medicaid, some of the Medicaid programs have asset caps, not all. You worry about those asset caps. You can never have anything. So what does that mean? It means you're disincentivized to work. You have nowhere you can put the money. Even if I have a special needs trust, if the paycheck comes to me, it's in my name. Make sense? So an ABLE account, if I open an ABLE account, I have a place to put assets, money, funds, cash, checks, not real estate, not gold, not equities, just a savings and investment account that can grow up to $100,000 before my SSI benefits will be temporarily suspended until it goes back down. Is that making sense? So I'm getting my SSI benefits. I have an ABLE account. I'm earning money, or I'm not earning money, or a relative gives me a check for some $3,000, or I have a small insurance settlement. Money comes my way in my name. Whenever it has in the past, if it came my way, it created problems. And so families would always advise relatives, don't give my son or daughter money, et cetera, right? You know that story. Now, if I have an ABLE account, those funds can be written to me, and they can go into my ABLE account, and my SSI is protected. Yes, ma'am.
Does that mean that they take money out of your SSI as you earn income? Does that still apply?
We'll talk about that in a second. Yes.
Is the $100,000 a cap on the entire thing, or is that annually?
That is a cap if you want your SSI benefits to keep coming in. Okay? So This is important to remember. If I'm on SSI and I hit $100,000 in my ABLE account, which you'll learn is going to take a while, Social Security will temporarily suspend my benefits. I do not lose eligibility. When my account gets to 99 or below, my benefits resume. Now, I don't have to be on these benefits plans. I don't have to be a recipient of benefits at all to have an ABLE account. I just have to have a level of significance of my disability, and we'll get into that, that's enough that I would qualify for them if I wanted them. I have a friend with Down syndrome. He's never received federal benefits. His account, if it goes past $100,000, isn't going to change anything.
Is there any difference between someone who's on SSI and someone who's on SSDI?
SSDI, is there a cap, an asset cap if you're on SSDI? No. Some people are on just SSI, some are just on SSDI, some are on both. But if you are getting that, so the SSDI wouldn't be impacted, but the SSI would, okay? So for a lot of folks in the older ages, it's that SSI check that people think about when they're like, well, should I have an ABLE account? Well, I'm going to say if you receive SSI benefits and you don't have an ABLE account, that's when you're in a more risky situation, because you can put funds into the ABLE account and not worry about that cap, at least till you get to 100,000.
What about an account where the disabled person has a payee?
Has a rep payee. Okay, so let's get to that in a little bit, because that gets a little bit into the weeds, talking about representative payees, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about who can open them, who can manage them. You asked a question about, well, what about earning money and earning a paycheck, and what about the income part of it? As you know, Social Security does an income test and an asset test. This does not impact the income test. So if I get a job and I'm working more, the more I work, the more I earn. The more I earn, the lower my benefits payment on SSI is, right? But it's not dollar for dollar, it's relative. That will still be impacted by my working. But now that second piece that used to mess with me, because not only were my benefits going down while my income went up, my earned income, I had nowhere to put what I was earning. And so I'd spend money or not want to work more and not want to work at all. And now that can go into an ABLE account, and I can grow and I can save, and I can live I can participate in a way that I never could before. So that's why we say it incentivizes employment. I just came from the Jewish Vocational Center staff meeting in Chicago, and everybody nods when you say, oh yeah, does the individual with the disability not want to work, or not want to work more hours, or not want to get a raise, or not want to get a promotion? Oops, because the earnings are going to make their benefits become reduced. Oh yeah. But we all work. And if I'm working, if my son's working, he should be contributing to his upkeep. His benefits should change. His eligibility is not going to go away. It's just that he's going to earn more instead of getting it from the government. Make sense? And now with ABLE, he can put it into an account. A lot of folks have a special needs trust. I'm not an attorney, can't talk with you about special needs trusts, other than to say that often an ABLE account can be a good add-on tool if you have a trust. What are some examples of that? As you know, a special needs trust is a third party. There are first party ones, but the third party one is the one that I'm referring to. It's out of the control of the beneficiary. Nothing that is in the name of the beneficiary can be put into the trust. A trustee handles everything. You have to ask to be able to use the funds. It's for the individual's benefit, but it's never in the individual's control. If you have a special needs trust, a lot of folks will have that, and they may put monthly amounts into the individual's ABLE account, so that now the individual has some independence, has a regular amount of money that he or she can spend, and doesn't have to be asking constantly for funds to come out of the trust. Does that make sense? And as I said, like if my grandmother writes me a check, or I have a small insurance settlement, and you can't pay for housing out of a special needs trust, which you can out of an ABLE account, those kinds of things. There are good things about an ABLE account that make it worth having one. There are also good things about a special needs trust. So it's not either or. They can both work together. They can both be used, okay? On ABLE accounts, the earnings and the withdrawals are tax-free. So again, it's like when I have an IRA, whatever money goes into that, it earns tax advantaged. As long as I don't pull the money out of my IRA prior to the allowed age, I'll be fine. But if I pull it out beforehand, I would pay a penalty. In an ABLE account, as long as you're using the funds for qualified disability expenses, and we'll talk about what those are, you don't pay any taxes on the withdrawals and no penalties. And there's no timing, there's no request that has to be made, there's no permission that has to be gotten. It's your money. You can manage it and spend it as you like. And interestingly, in Illinois, we worked, a lot of my job last year was spent down in Springfield working to pass asset protection legislation, which did pass. And what that means, I'm sorry, that's a different one. That's the Medicaid one. Income tax deduction legislation. In Illinois, any Illinois taxpayer can contribute to any Illinois account, and it can be to more than one Illinois ABLE account, and you can take a state income tax deduction up to $10,000 for an individual filer, up to $20,000 for a joint filer. Does that make sense? That's very exciting. I'm quite sure that Illinois has the most generous tax deduction part to its ABLE program. So it's something to add to this is that we're all in Illinois, but it's always recommended that people look at their own state plans first. And this is a good example of why. Not only might there be different fee structures, but in our case, your Illinois ABLE plan, if you're an Illinois taxpayer, there are tax advantages for contributions. Yes?
Someone from outside of Illinois donates to the ABLE account, are they able to take a tax deduction?
No.
They have to be within an Illinois resident donating to it.
You have to be an Illinois taxpayer.
Okay.
You have to be an Illinois taxpayer. So I made a contribution to a friend's Illinois ABLE account last year for his graduation, and I will deduct that amount from my state income taxes later this afternoon. Yes.
So just to repeat that, 10,000 and 20,000.
Yes, 10,000 if you file jointly and or individually, and 20 if you file jointly. The only reason I'm not handing this out is because I don't want to lose you, and I want to get your questions when I'm not explaining something right. But a lot of what we're talking about is on this FAQs, and the information that some of it is also in the brochure, and I'm going to give you a lot of links and other information in my business card. So don't worry if you don't get it all written down in today.
If you send that to me, I can send it out to everybody.
Great, because this is definitely downloadable as a PDF, and you can print it out and share it with friends. And then lastly, 529 college savings accounts. A lot of families opened them up, started them for their kids. Then for one reason or another, our kids might not have gone on to college, and I've got some money sitting in that 529 account. With legislation we passed last year, you can now roll over your 529 account into an ABLE account if you so choose. Okay. All right. So those are some of the high-level benefits of the plan. Now about qualifying, the federal law, under current federal law, in order to qualify to be eligible for an ABLE account, your disability onset has to have been prior to age 26. I'm guessing that most of the people in this room have that. If your disability were acquired on the day after you turn 26 under current federal law, you do not qualify. You're not eligible to open an ABLE account. Why? Because when the legislation was going through Congress in 2014, at the last minute, the price tag that was attached to taxpayers for ABLE was so high, and it was so erroneous, but it was so high that our champions knew it wasn't going to go through. We wouldn't get it passed if they didn't reduce the age. So they slapped age 26 on it. I've heard different reasons for why 26 was added, and We are now, literally last week, a bill was reintroduced on Capitol Hill to raise the age to 46. And I hope that you'll all support that. Tammy Duckworth, our senator, who lost 2 legs in the Middle East and is a vet, acquired her disability after age 26, and she can't open an ABLE account. It's just a crazy, arbitrary thing. Meanwhile, you've got to have your onset. So autism, intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, cerebral palsy are very, make up the bulk of account owners today.
If you had a disability starting before 26, can you also open it after 26?
Great question. Can I open my account after I turn 26, as long as the disability started before 26? Yes. So you don't have to open it before you're 26. You can open it anytime. We have an 84-year-old woman in Pontiac, Illinois, who has an ABLE account. It's just when is the onset of my disability. The second piece is, do I qualify for SSI, SSDI, Medicaid? Is my disability of a level of severity that meets the Social Security definition of disability? I don't have to be receiving the benefits. So we interact with a parent of an infant who has Down syndrome. She's already opened an account for him to start saving money for him, even though it'll be years before he qualifies for SSI, SSDI, but she knows that he will qualify because of his disability. So what do you do? What does the government want to know about your qualification? Unlike the world of federal means tested benefits, again, this is a private, self-directed, self-driven savings program. And so we, Illinois ABLE, we don't want your diagnosis. We don't want you to send your receipts. We don't want you to send us copies of everything that you spend, as you would for federal means tested benefits, which makes sense. There you got to make it's government money. They want to know where it's going and make sure that you're not committing fraud. In the Illinois, in an ABLE accounts, in an Illinois ABLE, we don't want those documents. All we want is, when you register, is, well, we'll go a little bit, I'm getting ahead of myself. All you need to know is that if you're not on benefits, you just need to have a diagnosis or a letter written by a physician that indicates these 2 things: disability onset prior to 26 and qualifies for, has that level of severity. Don't send it to Illinois ABLE. Keep it in your file cabinet. You know how you keep all your other stuff for taxes in a file cabinet? That's where you keep this stuff. Keep it in a file cabinet, okay? Some people think they have to send it to us to open it, and that's not correct. There are other things that might need to be sent that you'll be interested in knowing about. Okay, we talked a little bit about what can go into my ABLE account. I can have my paycheck direct deposited in. Money from others. Money by gifts. It's only checks and cash, however. You can't even put cash into it. It has to be written as a check or an electronic funds transfer.
It can be written to that account, or it can be written to that person.
It can be written to that person. Okay. So it can be written to John Doe, the individual with the disability. It just has to be written in the name of the account owner.
Does the account have to be open before you get the first money from somewhere or someone?
Does the account have to be open before you get the first check from somewhere or someone? If you're in the world of benefits, if it were me, I would open that account up and get it started. It takes about 2 weeks to get everything in place. It's not as instantaneous and automatic as
Dollar to put it in?
the minimum amount that you need to have to put into an Illinois ABLE account is $25. Here's the deal. Put in $25 and let it sit there. By the end of the year, the $25 will be gone because there are fees associated with these accounts. So we'll talk about that. So these are really meant to be active savings investment accounts. But you can put the 25 in just to open up, and I'll tell you a little bit about how that process works, because I'm assuming that a lot of the folks in this room will serve as what we call an authorized individual. So I want you to know how it works for Illinois ABLE. We talked about distributions from SNTs, and you can raise money. I want a new wheelchair. I want to save money for XYZ. That people can make contributions to your ABLE account. Any third party can make a contribution.
An individual
individual who's disabled files their own tax return, can the tax refund go into that?
Yes,
Okay, state and federal.
yes, yep.
Does the money have to directly go in there, or can it go in one account and then go into there?
When you say, can it go into one account and then go into there, you mean like, could it go into my JP Morgan checking account and then go into Illinois Able? Yes. And I'll give you an example of, this morning, we got a little confused because I didn't do a great job of explaining it, so full disclosure. And it prompted me that next time I'm going to get a little diagram about how some of the cash flows work. But let me just ease your minds. The best people to talk to with real specific questions like that, it's not me, it's the customer service folks that you'll have the number for. They know this thing inside and out, and they will give you an answer that might even be different from mine, because sometimes, hopefully I don't give wrong answers all the time, but it's always a good idea to call customer service. They're really, really helpful and great about answering some of our specific questions. Okay. I don't like this slide, and the reason I don't is because it doesn't give us all of the expenses. So, and I lost this morning the thing that I read, which I thought was really helpful. A lot of people are like, well, what can I use this money for? What's a disability-related expense, a qualified disability-related expense? Can I use it for a trip, for a vacation, to go to the movies? And I can't say to you what the IRS would deem a qualified disability expense. I can only tell you that the Department of the Treasury issued after these plans were approved, the list of qualified disability expenses. Let me read you most of them. Ignore that, although that's partly it. Education, housing, SNTs can't pay for housing, transportation, employment training and support, assistive technology, personal support services, health, prevention, and wellness. So joining a gym, to me, is health, prevention, and wellness. Financial management, administrative services, legal fees, expenses for oversight and monitoring, and then finally, funeral and burial expenses. So those are actually listed on a list by the Treasury. But after that came out, we needed more clarification. And what the Treasury came back with was said, the list, a qualified disability expense should be construed broadly, and is there to not just for improving health, but also for increasing independence and quality of life. So I have to leave that to you to determine in the account owner what's going to increase and improve my quality of life. It also is intended not to be limited to things like medical expenses, but can include, and this I quote, daily living expenses. So again, and I will send this to you, I think it's an important thing for us to look at, because people say to me, well, what about, him saving money to go on a trip? If I were to say, go for it, and then 5 years from now you get audited, he gets audited, I would no longer have a job. But, you interpret that information, and I would be happy to send that to you. But it is broad and expansive and is intended to improve the quality of life of individuals who have disabilities. Make sense?
On the flip side, do they list anything that you can't?
No. Nope. And again, it's not, nobody from Social Security is going to come chasing after you. It's just if you ever get audited by the IRS, you need to have that letter, the diagnosis to be able to present, and you need to have, your records of how the money was spent. Yes, sir.
If you take money out of the account, what do you have to do to verify what it's used for? Just a check?
All you do is keep records. I keep copies of my receipts. I keep my bank statements for.
File taxes every year to show or
No, no.
Just keep a record of what it was used for.
Yeah, and just so often people will use their bank statement if they have the checking option. I recommend. I still keep old-fashioned receipts. I like to keep them. I recommend that as well. So it's really just treating it the way you would how you keep your other tax documents.
What do you do You get checks, is that right, to take money out?
You can get a checkbook with the checking option if you choose it. And so we'll go into that, we'll go into that shortly. Any other questions at the moment? Are you still with me on this? Is it making sense? It's pretty cool stuff. And it was fought for a long time. Okay, so here's where I think we might want to get into the weeds a little bit. With an ABLE account, unlike 529 college savings accounts, if you open a 529 college savings account, you can be the owner and your child or another person can be the beneficiary of the funds, right? But you, the owner, control the money. With ABLE accounts, uniquely, and this was fought for by disability advocates, for better or worse, the account beneficiary is always the account owner. The individual with the disability, no matter how significant, is always the account owner. It does great things in that it fosters independence, but it also creates some challenges. Yes, ma'am.
Just for the state of Illinois or all?
All of them.
Thank you.
All states, including Illinois. The account owner is always the beneficiary, is always the individual with the disability, and an account owner can only have one account nationwide. You cannot have an account here in Ohio and in California. You can roll over into a different account easily, but you can only keep one account. So, great. I'm a person with a disability. I've got significant autism. I'm nonverbal. My family feels, and most of my financial decisions are made for me, right? Let's do the version of I'm that person and I'm under guardianship. I'm an adult, I'm under guardianship. Do we have some guardianship here? Okay. I'm under guardianship of the person in Illinois. My parents, my guardians were advised don't get guardianship of the estate. I'm not going to have any assets, right? I can't have more than $2,000. Guardianship of the estate is more expensive to get, and it is and you have to manage it every year. So if I'm not going to have any assets, why would anybody need to get guardianship of the estate? Well, when ABLE came along, it made it a little tricky, because a lot of parents, when I first started this role, were attempting to open ABLE accounts for their children who were under guardianship of the person, where you can make decisions of the person. They had rightly, for good reason, been advised not to get guardianship of the estate. You don't need it, of the estate. You don't need it. And when they submitted the guardianship of the person documents to Illinois ABLE, they were rejected. They couldn't open an account, because when you're guardian of the person, you can't, that doesn't give you the authority to make decisions, financial decisions for the individual under guardianship. Is that making sense? So, if you are a guardian of the person and you know that you don't have guardianship of the estate, the rules. We were able to get some of the rules amended last year so that you didn't get caught in this, where the only way you could open the ABLE account was to spend the money you were going to put in the ABLE account to go pay an attorney to get guardianship of the estate. Made no sense, but we needed a way around it, at least short term. And that is that if you are the parent of an adult with a disability, you can open an account for that account owner using a copy of the birth certificate. It can't be the one with their cute feet and just the name. It has to have the mother's name, the father's name. It has to have all the details. Send in the copy. You can now open using a copy of the birth certificate. Now I am the guardian of the individual, and I do have guardianship of the estate. Send in guardianship of the estate, no problem. Okay? Now I am an adult with a disability, and I don't have a guardian. I'm doing it on my own, but I'm not really all that comfortable handling my money. I need help. I want help. I can grant, using a form on the website, or it may already be in place, a short form power of attorney, and just sign that away, get it notarized, and somebody else can serve as that authorized individual. There are different levels of authorization. So some folks, you don't have to be a full-blown authorized individual, which gives you, as the authorized individual, you can open, you can close, you can write checks, your name is basically on the account. managing it for this person. There are other levels that an individual with a disability and account owner can give you, you know, the ability to get statements and other things. But this is the most, you know, the most all-encompassing level of authority.
Hopefully I'm not getting too much into legalese, but upon my death, the successor guardian, would they therefore become the authorized individual? So who?
Upon your death, would a successor guardian become the authorized individual? Upon your death, would that successor guardian, if it's the same guardianship, would have to send in the documentation to the ABLE plan to change the name of the authorized individual? Yes. Yes.
You already have a financial, a will with as financial power of attorney.
Yeah.
Can you submit that, or should you still?
If you have a financial power of attorney, that should suffice. Yes.
If you open the account, so my son's 13, and we're gonna have financial, he's always gonna have us be the financial person too.
Yep.
So if we open the ABLE account now, and when he turns 18, do we have to go back with the guardianship paperwork?
That's a really great question. So I'm opening it for my child. We're pretty sure that he is always going to need somebody to manage his finances for him. What happens when he turns 18? In Illinois, when he turns 18, 90 days prior to his turning 18, he's the account owner, even at 13, and you're right now the authorized individual, because as a minor, you don't even have to submit any of this. You're just opening it for a minor and you're good. This is just for adults with disabilities. So he's 13, you've opened the account, 90 days before he turns 18, he receives a letter and you receive a letter. And the letter says, in 90 days, you're turning 18 and this is your account and you get to do what you want with it. At that point, you are probably going to already be in the process, and I'm hypothetically speaking, you may already be in the process of getting guardianship of him, or establishing a setup for how you want to, how he's going to be supported. I mean, who knows? Maybe he will be able to handle the ABLE account independently. But he will be notified, you will be notified, and that's going to tell you you need to do something about it. If nothing is done about it, you'll remain on the account as the authorized individual. So it's really for people who have, our rules are that it's really for account owners who have the capacity to handle their own account. So that they're like, okay, this is mine. Ma, you're out of here. I'm doing this on my own. Or I'm an account owner who does not have the capacity. We're not going to automatically take you off. The account will continue on, but we're going to let you know that if there needs to be a change, that you should make that change. And it's really for the account owner who should have, should be given the opportunity to take care of his own funds. Make sense? Okay. All right, so is that helpful? This is, I think, for us, that's understanding a little bit about the authorized individual. When you complete the enrollment form, whether it's online or whether it's on paper, the first thing they ask you is, who's opening this account and what's your relationship to the person? Am I the account owner? Am I the authorized individual? And then what happens is, somebody asked about how quickly this happens and what you have to put in. There are two things that happen when you open your Illinois ABLE account. When you open it as that authorized individual, the account will get opened, but it'll be frozen until two things happen. One is, obviously, money has to show up. Otherwise, you can't withdraw anything. The second, and equally important, is that the copy of one of these things has to show up to Illinois ABLE and be verified before you can do anything with the account. So you might send in a check for $10,000 and it goes into the account, but until you send in that documentation as an authorized individual, you can't do anything with the account. Be aware that it takes about 14 days to get these accounts set up with checking and doing the background checks and things like that. Okay? Yes?
You mentioned Illinois residency to get the tax deduction.
Correct.
The person who's the guardian doesn't have to be an Illinois resident?
No, the guardian, it doesn't have to be an Illinois resident. That's correct. Whoever the guardian is, yes.
is if the disabled person is on SSI and works part-time and receives a check, and that check is automatically put into the ABLE account, will that be deducted, and Social Security deducts it each month from any money you make outside of, will it still be deducted?
So you're talking about the income test,
Yes.
right? Yes,
It still would be deducted.
that's correct. It's not deducted, their benefits are just reduced.
Reduced.
That's correct. And so it goes back to that idea that, you know, you're earning more, so your benefits are proportionately reduced. What ABLE helps with is now you have a place to put all that money you're earning and use it, and you still qualify and get your benefits, you know, for as long as you want and need them. Yes.
So is the authorized individual the same as a payee on another account?
Okay, so we got that. Were you the one that asked about the rep payee? And I was like, not yet. So rep payee. Rep payee is I cannot open an account as an authorized individual simply by being somebody's rep payee. I have to have another one of these roles. Why is that? Well, a lot of service providers serve as rep payee. And there are individuals who have been authorized to help facilitate the funds that come from Social Security. So the rep payee role is a Social Security very clearly defined role of facilitating those payments. It really isn't related to doing things with your private money. So until we've explored this further, and we are, because there are a lot of states, there are several states that are really eager to make it possible for rep payees to be able to open ABLE accounts. I disagree. And that's simply because a rep payee who works for a service provider where, if you haven't heard, there's almost a 50% turnover rate right now, who gets hold of and has access to the Social Security number of an adult with a disability and decides to open up an account and get this person to start putting money into it, I think that the potential for fraud and abuse is much higher. Now, a lot of parents serve as rep payees, but you're also the parent, right? Or you're an adult who's been given power of attorney. So there's that extra layer of protection that we think in Illinois is very important. There are other states that are a lot looser with that, where you can just go in, you don't have to send in documentation, that you have the authority to open an account on somebody else's adult's Social Security number. We think that's highly risky. And so, however, that said, a lot of really very good service providers do serve in, you know, they manage money for their for the individuals they serve. We really would like for to find a way for maybe a service provider to serve in that authorized individual role. And so we're going to be meeting with some organizations and try to explore how that could happen. And we're working at it both locally and nationally. But in the meantime, you cannot open an account just by saying I'm the person's rep payee. We've prevented many accounts from being opened that way.
Do we use the other parent then, or?
Well, what do you mean as a parent? Do you use the other parent?
My son's payee account. Can I still open that, or should I have my husband open it?
This will be a quiz. Can she open an account for her son? Yes. So you can kind of put the rep payee aside simply because you're his parent. And so you can be his authorized individual if he's an adult or a minor. As a minor, you don't have to submit any paperwork. But when he's 18 and over, you either have a power of attorney, guardianship of the estate, or a copy of the birth certificate. Make sense? It can be really complicated, but I'm glad that we're talking about it because I think it's important for you, if you decide to open an account, to have a sense of what you're dealing with here. Okay, here's the most.
Can both parents be on the account?
Great question. Can both parents be on the account?
Should they?
Two parents can be authorized individuals. Yes, you can have two co-authorized individuals, but it does affect whether or not you can use the checking option. Now that we're getting a little bit into where does my money go once I open the account, we can talk a little bit about that. I won't go deep into this. As with our retirement accounts, 529 and college savings accounts, when you open up these plans, you usually often are provided with a list of options where you can invest the money. You can have, if you're putting a part of your paycheck into your account, you can direct 20% of it goes to this fund, 20% of it goes to that fund, 10% of it goes to cash. Make sense? We all know that. That's what this is. It's just that there are 6 options. We've kept it very simple. We've kept it very high quality, low cost, because we're new to this concept of investing in the disability community. So the basic structure is aggressive down to conservative. Aggressive tracks equities and bonds, down to conservative, which tracks mostly cash. And the reason I say tracks is because if I'm an account owner with if I'm in the growth option and 60% of my investment is in equities, where it says stocks, I want to try to get rid of that word. I'm not investing outright in the stocks. My money is going into a passively managed indexed fund that is managed by BlackRock or Vanguard or Charles Schwab, very highly rated companies who create these funds to track the movement of the financial markets. Make sense? So I don't own the outright equity. I just have a share in a fund, just like a lot of our savings and investments. And it really is designed to be very simple for a community that's quite new to investing. In fact, when I do presentations to self-advocates, it can be a lot of fun because we start to talk about what is risk. Am I taking more risk with conservative or more risk with aggressive? And there's really a lot of good learning that we have, and we can do that because we've kept it super simple. So with Illinois Able, you can choose amongst these 6 investment funds. And then there's a 7th option. We call it not investment funds, investment options. And then there's a 7th option called the checking account option. 30% of the assets currently in Illinois Able accounts, and I would say accounts pretty much across the nation that have checking options, are in 30% of the assets are in the checking account. Why? Well, remember when I was saying managing basic daily living expenses and having freedom and independence to improve. A lot of people are really liking having this checking option. So how many investment options are there? 6. 7. Good. Like, I hate calling it 6. No, 7. I hate calling this an investment option. I don't see checking as investment. But it's referred to, when you look at the plan disclosure documents and read them, you'll see it called an investment option. When you look at the application, checking will be listed as one of the investment options. To me, no, it's not. But, oh well. The checking option is with Fifth Third Bank. Yes, sir.
So you could put 90% of your money in one of those other funds and put 10% in checking account?
Yes, sir. And you can set it up so that on a regular basis, money transfers out, is moved out of an investment option into checking. Yes.
Okay, so what then is the probability of loss in an account? I know that.
Of loss?
Yeah, well, like, of course, in an aggressive one, you could lose money.
That's right.
And in a conservative one, you would not be as likely.
Right.
Because if you get up to, I think the max is 100,000.
Well, the maximum contribution you can put in each year, we'll talk about next. But yeah, the 100,000 is a marker if you're on SSI.
Yeah, so then, you could lose a lot of money. You're not going to. Well, let's say you have 50,000 in it. If the stock market does well, do you gain? In your able account?
Depends on the fund that you're in. Yes, I mean that's part of the investment side of this. Like, what is my risk tolerance? When do I need the money? How soon am I going to withdraw it? There was a young woman in Alaska Alaska's part of our alliance, and she opened an Able account early on, and she was a self-advocate account owner, and she put everything into the aggressive fund and then withdrew the money like a week later. And the market had dipped a little bit the value of her investment had gone down a little bit. She didn't know, and that's part of some really essential financial literacy, financial wellness education that we really need to do with a lot of our self-advocates and account owners and ourselves. Yes, sir.
Could the money be just put in a fixed income account where, like a lot of banks are getting 2 and 3%, a CD or something, there's no risk at all?
Well, the conservative option in the investment side, I don't think Sally Mae's written up there. It probably should have been. Sally Mae should be in there. But the conservative option for the investments, this 60% goes into a Sally Mae bank. Well, if you put it in the conservative, you're going to get this breakdown. If you want to totally, fully protect the money, where would you put it? The checking account.
Oh, I see.
Right. And the checking account earns interest, but yes, it's an interest-bearing checking account. It's a fully operational checking account.
Well, another way of thinking of it is that Fifth Third Bank is the only one that's FDIC insured.
That's correct. Unlike these funds, they're not insured. So back to that investment risk, the checking account option comes with $250,000 worth of insurance. Now, if my account isn't going to be that high, I'm fully protected, but I'm also not able to take advantage of upticks in the market, but I'm protected from downturns.
So do the fees associated vary depending upon which investment option?
Yes, and we'll talk about fees in a second, so thank you for asking. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about the fees. Things to share about the checking account option, and this is where we got a little bit confusing this morning, and I'm afraid to even go there, but I'm gonna. So, and I will do. So, the Fifth Third checking account option is a full-blown checking account. Fabulous. It's, in my opinion, the best option out there for any of the ABLE plans. Why? It comes with a real-time debit card. You can get checks. You don't have to preload the debit card. You can write checks out of it. You can use it like a regular checking account, because that's what it is. The difference, there are two things to remember if you're looking and thinking about this checking account. One is, we have a lot of Fifth Third branches around here, right? You cannot go into a Fifth Third branch and open an ABLE account. You cannot go into a Fifth Third branch and take a check and deposit it into your ABLE checking option. Okay? And the reason is, the states, by law, must safeguard the assets. We have to safeguard and protect the account owners from potential loss of their benefits, their federal benefits, by monitoring what's in those accounts. So you'll see shortly that does anybody know what the most is that you can put in every year to an ABLE account in Illinois? 15,000. So the most you can contribute each year is 15,000. If I write a check for 16,000 to Illinois ABLE, it's going with a check, it's going to bounce the check back to me if there's nothing else in the account, because it'll take the account over the annual contribution limit, and that 1,000 additional above the 15 could be counted toward my assets for federal tested benefits. See what I mean? We're outside of the ABLE world. Now all of a sudden I've got that money. So for that reason, Illinois ABLE has to monitor all of the flow of funds. The only way that we can do that is if we make sure that whenever a contribution is made, it comes into Illinois ABLE, not into the checking account directly. Is that making sense? So if you set up, you want 50% put into the aggressive option and you want 50% put into the checking account, every time, let's say your son's working and he makes $100, that check can be direct deposited into his ABLE account. $50 will go into his checking option, and $50 will go into his investment option, and it's nice and clean and good. So that all makes sense. Last year, my friend, who's this great, responsible young man who's got a job, and he's on the spectrum, and he's making it happen, and he's on SSI, and he's watching his accounts because he has an ABLE account, and he also has a regular checking account, let's say Chase. And when that checking account balance in his regular account started to get close to 2,000, he said, well, I can't let that get above 2,000 because even though I have an ABLE account, if I have assets outside of that ABLE account above 2,000, I lose my benefits, right? So smartly, he said, I got to move that money over into my ABLE account. So he took a check from his checking account, because you can get checks with it, and he made it out to cash, and he looked at the account number on the bottom, and it's the way that I would deposit a check, right? I find my account number, I put it in the mail, I mail the check to Fifth Third Bank. Fifth Third Bank gets the check, and Fifth Third Bank looks at it, and Fifth Third Bank is like, we can't take this money for that account, because that account is associated with Illinois ABLE. And so they kicked the check back to him. And what happened? His benefits were suspended because his account went over 2,000 and he hadn't been able to get it into the ABLE account. So the moral of the story is, whenever you make a contribution, whether it's a paycheck or an electronic funds transfer, that's easy. Anything should go into the ABLE account, not into the checking account. Make sense? You assign it to the checking account, and then it's available to you. Make sense?
How does one transfer from a Chase account to this?
Write a check to Illinois ABLE. John Doe's account, boom, and it goes to Illinois ABLE, not to John Doe's checking account at Fifth Third Bank. Don't send it to Fifth Third, send it to Illinois ABLE. All of your contributions need to go to Illinois ABLE.
And it's always be a paper check and there's no other.
It can be electronic funds transfer, it can be automated checking clearinghouse thing, but otherwise a check can't be cash.
Got it.
Now, what's weird about it, and this is why it gets a little confusing, is that's the one place where it doesn't act like a regular checking account, because I can't go into Fifth Third in a bricks and mortar or sending it by mail or calling their customer service to make the contribution. But when I open the checking account, I get a debit card. And I can go to any of the 54,000 machines anywhere nationwide, stick it in, and withdraw money from my ABLE checking account. And that's where it gets a little confusing. So the taking out is not a problem. It's the putting in, because we have to make sure you don't go above that $15,000, okay? Did I totally confuse you? Oh, good, because I really confused everybody this morning. Okay, onward to... We were talking about some of the fees and some of the rules. $15,000 total goes in every year from all contributors, unless you're working. If you're working, you, the account owner, can put in up to your gross wages. Let's say I'm making $10,000 a year, or the poverty limit, which has just been raised to, I think, 12,000, I think it's 180. I don't know the number off the top of my head yet. But let's say approximately 12,000. So my parents or grandparents could put in 15,000 this year. They could roll it over from my 529. I'm making 10,000 this year. I can contribute another 10,000, so for a total of 25,000 this year. So if I'm working, up to 27,000 can go in. If I'm not working, the maximum that can go in each year is how much? 15, yes.
So what if the account owner is the only person putting money in? There's nobody else, no parents, and they work. Can they still go up to that 27, or because they're the only person making the contribution, are they?
Well, the additional amount, so they have their 15,000, and the additional amount that they can put in, if they're making 27,000, then yes, they can put in up to 27,000. So if I'm contributing to my account exclusively, and I'm working, and I make 27,000 this year, I could put in that much into my account because I'm working. Make sense? So it's just it's a little Benny to people who are working. If you haven't noticed, ABLE accounts, like everything in the disability community, if you haven't been told, it's about employment. We are about working and participating in the community. And so if the individual has the potential to work, there are a lot of good things happening. Not everything is great yet, but it's happening. One account per individual. I think we talked about that marker of 100,000 if you're on SSI and you don't want the benefits suspended. If you're not on SSI, or you're on SSI and you don't care, the maximum lifetime account balance is $450,000. Well, at $15,000 max each year, And given that 30% of the assets now are in checking accounts, it's going to be a while before any of us gets to 450.
But again, I kind of keep going back to this. So if an individual started out on SSI and then was switched to SSDI under his own work record, he can put 450, he can build up to 450,000 because he's no longer on SSI, he's only on SSDI.
He could build up to 450,000 even if he's still on SSI. It's just his benefits will be suspended.
Okay.
But yes, that's right. For somebody who is not worried about SSI, yes. Over time. No withdrawal limits, no timing restrictions, no permission has to be asked. This twice per year investment option change, what does that mean? It means that, and this is in the world of investing mostly with other kinds of accounts as well. If I, with my health savings account, if I put in, I select my investment options, I can't go in multiple times a year and change out those investment options. Same holds true with ABLE. Once you select, I want 50% going into aggressive and 50% going into checking, you can do that twice a year, twice a calendar year. After that, you can't do it again until the next calendar year, okay? You can have your investment option automatically transfer, and it only counts as one investment option change. You can set it up so that it moves money into the checking account on a regular basis, and it doesn't count as your twice per year. Annual asset fees. The underlying assets, you know those funds, the index-based funds, the 6 funds, depending upon which one you choose, so the more conservative ones are down at around 34 basis points or a little more than 1/3% on the underlying average assets for the year. And the aggressive fund is up at around 37 basis points. So around that 1/3% is paid on the account every quarter annually on the underlying assets, those funds, okay? So that's one fee. I could do the math, and I should, just to give you an example of what 1,000, I think 1,000 would be $30. Then on top of it, the program manager, which is called a Census College Savings, they're a Census Government Savings, they're out of Boston. That's who handles all of the record keeping, the quarterly statements that you get, the website, all of that stuff, charges to do so $15 a quarter, totaling $60 a year. If you get paper statements. If you get electronic statements, it's $11.25 a quarter. Now, that may seem like a bit at $45 a year, but when was the last time you looked at how much it costs to set up a special needs trust? And when you think about the fact that you can now continue to get the benefits, and an individual can work and save money, and there's potential for it to earn money, it's not as low cost as many of the college savings plans are yet, but the more that the market grows, the more those 8 million people nationwide who qualify open accounts, part of my job is to get those fees reduced. But when 529 College Savings started, I think the fees were like 1 to 1.5% a year on your money. But our job is to help get them down. Yes?
I can see that type of fee, like when people ask what they can do to help, if you can say like, well, could you pay this every month for a person with an ABLE account?
Yeah. Could you make a regular contribution to his ABLE account, which will help to cover the fees to have it, but hopefully will help it to grow. Yeah. Yes.
Wait, that's a cheap fee. It's $3, not $30.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I knew there'd be somebody who would correct my math. It's $3, not 30. Thank you. $3 on 1,000, right?
Yeah, if you had 100 grand in there, it'd be like $300.
It's really not very much money, given the benefit to individual account owners. The checking account is a separate, there's a separate fee structure for it. Be aware. There's a $2 monthly fee, easily waived. Get your statements electronically or keep $250 in the account, and you will not pay that $2 monthly fee, like a lot of checking accounts. Yes, sir.
Can the monthly SSI check be deposited directly into the?
Such a good question. Can my SSI check, which can be direct deposited, right, into what, be direct deposited into my checking account? So I'm, my checking option of ABLE, yes, sorry. Right now, my SSI check can be direct deposited. It has to be direct deposited somewhere or put on a card, right?
Right.
Okay, so it can be direct deposited into my Chase account. Let's say we'll call it Chase. The question is, can it be direct deposited into my Illinois ABLE checking option, the Fifth Third checking account? Well, it's a checking account, right? So it should be able to be, but we don't know. So I cannot advise you. We have contacted Social Security. We are asking, we are knocking, we are saying, hey, people want to be able to deposit this into their Fifth Third checking directly, because you can direct deposit everything else. The question is that, remember how I said you can't walk into the Fifth Third branch and put the money in? It has to go to Illinois ABLE first, which uses a routing number, and then into Fifth Third. So we're not sure how Social Security Administration will rule on it. So we don't know yet.
Wouldn't the payee part come into play too? Because wouldn't that account have to say payee on it?
What do you mean?
Okay, say you chose the checking account for Illinois ABLE.
Yep.
If you are the payee, doesn't SSI make you have the account say payee, and this doesn't?
If there's a representative.
I don't know. That's a good learning for me. I thought the person's name is not, so it's John Doe, you as rep payee.
Yeah, so that's on the account, on the checks.
Interesting. If it's a service provider, is it the service provider's name, or is it a person's name at the service provider? Anybody know? Good question. I always get a question I can't answer. So I have a sneaky suspicion that Social Security is going to make it hard to do, which kind of stinks. But
Don't you think in a way that that's their game, because they don't want you to save it, they want you to spend it?
yeah. And they certainly don't want you taking the funds and investing it in the aggressive fund. That ain't the point. So yeah. So I think that we may lose that one, but there are other ones we're hoping we're going to win. Yes.
Now, I'm confused by your third bullet point, because I thought the account could only have 100,000.
So can somebody explain that? What does the 100,000 stand for?
SSI.
Only if you are an SSI recipient do you care about the 100,000. And why do you care about it? What happens if I'm on SSI and my account hits 100,000? Benefits are suspended. So I shouldn't call it a cap, it's a marker. For people on SSI, that $100,000 is an important marker to be aware of. If you're not on SSI, or even if you are and you don't care, that marker, the total account can grow to $450,000, and then you can't contribute anymore. But with 15 grand a year going in and spending, it's going to take a while. The average account size in an Illinois ABLE account right now is about $6,000. That's fantastic. I mean, I think that's fantastic, and it's getting bigger every day. Why? Because no more $2,000 cap, and most of the people who have these accounts receive SSI. Yes, ma'am.
Even though ABLE and SSI are completely separate,
Yep.
do we have to report SSI?
Great question. Do I have to report this to Social Security? Is that what you're asking? No, but you might get asked, or you might offer it up. And,
Well, they're going to find it by their Social Security number anyway.
well, they will, but here's my card. Social Security and Medicaid, I go on record saying, and HUD's been even the worst, have been terrible about training their staff and letting people know that ABLE accounts cannot be counted against people who are on benefits. In other words, I have a contact who went to her benefit specialist in Arlington Heights and sat down and mentioned the ABLE account, and they said, oh, we're going to have to do a re-evaluation, and that ABLE account's going to count against you. Stop the conversation, pick up the phone, and call me. We are battling at the federal level. It is unbelievable what we are having to do, because they are giving you the wrong information, and they're misleading because they don't know, they don't get trained. I understand it's a big, huge bureaucracy, but this is federal law. Train your staff. Medicaid, train your staff, Social Security, and their argument is that it's chicken and egg. These are really small accounts. Only a few people have them. So our staff can't really know how to answer these unless it's something that they do all the time. No, train your staff. So can you see I get very fiery about this? Because it's such a game changer, and it's good for federal agencies that people with disabilities are getting some independence. They should be helping us. Yes.
Did I understand it right then? Any interest you earn on that account, you don't have to claim it?
Correct.
You don't have to claim it?
No interest, no withdrawals. Correct. Now, if you open the account for your child, your adult child, save $5,000 in it, and you take yourself on a vacation and leave him at home, if you get audited, you're going to have some trouble. Does that make sense? Yes.
Can you address the payback issue? 'Cause that's
We're going to address that payback issue. I hate that payback issue. I'll put this up while we're addressing it. Let me just see. Yeah, we'll address payback. And this, again, all of this is here. While I address it, I'm going to. These are FAQs, downloadable. Hopefully, there's enough here. I'll start here, but definitely can get more to you. This, I forgot to bring my sign up. I started a newsletter every month called Access Able. We send out information about Illinois Able, updates, all that stuff. If you would like to receive it, you get nothing else. That's all you'll get is that once a month little blurb. First name, last name, email, written clearly on my very handy dandy. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And then lastly, I'll hand out these. Well, these will go around as well. I'll ask somebody else to open them. These are the brochures. What you find in here are customer service numbers, great folks to talk to. I won't hand these out because I don't have that many of them, but my card is here. Please feel free to take it. Again, if you ever run into a problem with an office, I hope you'll have it in your wallet and will call me. So those are being handed out while I talk about the infamous Medicaid clawback. I hate that phrase because it sounds like Medicaid put money in and now it's clawing it back. What is the Medicaid clawback? Can somebody describe it?
You said clawback?
It's fondly referred to in our community as the Medicaid clawback. Does anybody know what it is?
There's money in the account when the person dies, the state gets that money back since they paid to support you through their lifetime.
That's pretty great way to put it. If there's money in a first person account, including ABLE, not just, and the person dies, state Medicaid agency, HFS in our case, has not only has the authority, but by federal law is required to go in and recover for itself whatever portion of the account to pay itself back for any benefits that it paid out to the individual during the individual's lifetime. Make sense? Yep. Okay. That exists now. That exists, and it's always been there. Along comes ABLE. First, along came special needs trusts. One of the reasons special needs trusts became a popular product is that money could go into the special needs trust, and Medicaid can never touch that money when the individual dies because it's not in the individual's name. Make sense? But ABLE accounts are in the individual's name. And so it has scared a lot of families out of opening ABLE accounts because of fear that, gee, there's going to be money in this account, and if he dies, Medicaid's going to take it. Medicaid's going to claw it back. They're going to take the money. And it's true that Medicaid can. There are two things. Illinois, that asset protection that I mistakenly referred to earlier, one of the first things that I did when I started this was work to pass with our legislators in Illinois to pass asset protection legislation at the state level. What does it mean? It means that in certain cases, when I die, and let's say there's $10,000 in my account, Medicaid, with certain benefits that they paid to me during my lifetime, is not allowed to go in Illinois and take that money in certain circumstances. However, most people in this room are maybe talking about home-based waiver. You might have somebody who's on the PUNS list or was pulled from the PUNS list, is receiving the kinds of what's called LTSS, long-term supports and services, lives in a SILA, goes to a day program. Those kinds of Medicaid waiver funds are not covered by that law we got passed in the state. 75% of the people who own ABLE accounts are the individuals with the kinds of disabilities who are going to probably be getting LTSS benefits. Is that making sense, or already are? No matter what we do at the state level, we can't legislate against Medicaid's authority to come in if the individual dies and pay itself back for benefits during the lifetime. We are working with other states and disability advocates at the federal level to change that law, because it's preventing people from opening accounts because they're afraid. There are a couple of things I want to ask you to think about when you're thinking about whether, if Medicaid clawback is what might be the thing that prevents you from opening an account. We could talk about ways to look at it. We are working on it. If you've got an account that's got $100,000 in it, you know, and the individual dies, that's a significant amount of money that if they've gotten home-based waiver all their lives, that Medicaid can come in and take that money first. And we all say, well, that was our private money, and we were saving that, and he was saving it. It should go into his estate and be given to somebody else. Right now, there's nothing we can do about it. We're fighting it. We're working on it. There are a lot of people, a lot of folks who feel that Medicaid clawback should not be changed, that it should stay where it is. Something to think about when you're thinking about Medicaid clawback. Currently and for the foreseeable future, these accounts are not going to be so substantial that the benefits, that the clawback fear should outweigh the benefit. At $6,000 average, let's say they even go up to $20,000 if I'm getting those long-term supports and services. The first thing that gets paid before Medicaid can touch it is any outstanding qualified disability expenses, and then secondly, my funeral and my burial. So that can and should come right out of the account, you know, with lower balances. Some disability advocates take a holistic look at this and say, let's assume Medicaid we can't get that law changed. If I'm receiving those kinds of long-term supports and services, Medicaid waivers like home-based services, I'm probably in my lifetime going to receive benefits of upwards of $1 million in benefits from Medicaid. If I have $50,000 in an ABLE account and Medicaid chooses to come in and be the first one to take it, you know, what were the benefits I had from that account during my lifetime? And I think that that's something that I think about a lot, because ABLE accounts are not death accounts, they're living accounts. And a lot of times with the folks in our community, we think about what happens when I die, what happens when I die, and we set up for that. And then we forget about what about we're living too. And ABLE is all about living. So that's you know, a thought about Medicaid. Does it make sense? I don't want to give you a sense not to care about it, but I like to put it in a more holistic perspective as we're talking about it.
What about Medicare?
No, and it's not Medicare. You know what? I can't say no. I can't answer that question. I think it's just Medicaid, but I'm not familiar enough with Medicaid to know. But I can certainly try to find out.
Would there be a way, if you have two children with disabilities, if the older one dies first, a way to take those funds from the ABLE and put it in the other child's?
Wouldn't that make sense? Yeah. Wouldn't that be a great idea? Like, I can assign a successor beneficiary to my 529 college savings account. You can't yet do that with an ABLE account. Your child could roll his or her account over to a sibling that qualifies. But he cannot. Well, think about it. Why can he not have a successor beneficiary to his ABLE account? Because they're protecting the Medicaid, right? As long as Medicaid wants first up, so if I'm able to give the money to my sibling, then Medicaid can't go in and get it, right? And we're fighting for that.
What if the sibling is also disabled and also has an ABLE account?
That's what I
Well, then, you'd have to roll over the funds. You'd have to close the account and roll the funds into his account before you die. In other words, you can't do it when you die. You can only do it when you're alive. Does that make it? It's like so convoluted, but it's kind of part of. And listen, this to me is the most transformative thing that's happened to our community in the longest time. I'm so excited. I hope everybody will open or at least consider opening an account. But it isn't without its early flaws. As was 529, it's so new, it's so young, and it's so like, what? I don't believe I can have my own money. So all of these things will change over time. We're working on it, but in between, we just have to be a little bit knowledgeable and savvy about this.
I'm going to put in my 2 cents. We've had an able account for my son before Illinois even started. I have an Ohio able because
we didn't have ours yet.
And I only put my son's money in that account. That's just my philosophy. I don't want Medicaid in some way to fall back my money that I would put in this account.
Yep.
I only put in money he earned from his job, money that he's gotten for a gift from someone or whatever. That's just my philosophy.
Yep.
I think it gets around the problem of the clawback somewhat, because I agree with you that if they've been supporting my son through whatever, home-based or whatever, they probably deserve to get that money back if it's his money, but they're not going to take mine. So.
And it's one of those things where as long as that's in place, these accounts aren't going to grow hugely. They're going to remain relatively small. There has been, I encourage people to look at these seriously and share information and share the news about them, because we want to get the fees down lower, even though it's $3 on 1,000. It's that's not a lot, but we really it's a game changer for us, and we have to embrace it. And our community, and I'm part of the community, can be a little bit skittish about change and likes the comfort that comes from being taken care of. And I like it too, to a point. But we can't, on the one hand, say we want jobs, we want to be in the community, we want to be living in the community, we want to be participating, we want all this stuff. Oh, but don't touch, all my protections. That's changing, and I'm excited about it. Because for an individual who really is not going to work, those benefits are never going to go away. But for a person who can do more, this is a great way to help make that happen.
Actually, I was going to ask you about that. I saw this on something. The actual proposal is Senate Bill number 651 at the federal level. It's called the Able Age Adjustment Act. So for any of you that want to be advocating for this and reaching out to your legislators, that would be the bill that you refer to.
We'd really appreciate it. We have sent letters to Duckworth and Durbin, and that would really help. We now have to get the House of Representatives educated and on board, but that will be a really big help for the program as a whole. Last question, and then I'll stay a little longer to answer other questions.
I was told that Ohio has better benefits. It's just the fees that are.
Of course you were told that. How wrong. Here's the thing, I collaborate well with the, no. Ohio has its own, there are 12 states that are part here. From an account owner standpoint, from Illinois, if you own a stable account in Ohio, you are paying almost twice as much in asset management fees as you're paying in Illinois. There is no tax deduction for contributions. For me, if I'm an Illinois account owner and my parents or somebody wants to give me money, they can't take a tax deduction. So there are benefits to having the account in your own state. One of the reasons that a lot of people were directed to Ohio's plan is A, they were the first one out, but B, that whole thing where if you're a parent of an adult and we require that you prove that you have the authority to operate on that individual Social Security number, that's not required with Ohio Able. All you do is check the box. And I feel that it opens up plans to much greater fraud. So there's a few additional steps, but I think it strengthens. In terms of the underlying funds, I couldn't comment. I think most of the plans have pretty pretty decent funds structures.
That tax reduction you just mentioned, That's only on Illinois tax.
Correct.
Not on federal tax.
Correct. It's only for your Illinois state income tax, but hey, whoa. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I'll stick around for a few minutes.